Welcome back to Lost Legacies. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
And I'm Dad.
That's right, people. Dad's back.
Dad's back.
In this special Lost Legacies episode, it's not part of the usual schedule, so we just thought we'd surprise you. Dad has some free time on his hands, so he figured he'd swing by the studio.
Just putzing along, showed up. Doorman let me in. Here I am.
It's been a while since we had an Ask Dad, so we'll see what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about some storytelling and stuff. However, I do got a little story to tell y'all. Also, listeners, in the last episode, I mentioned how I wasn't feeling good. I really got sick this past weekend, so you can probably still hear it in my voice and head. It's like, man, what a weekend. But so if you're wondering, yeah, that's what's going on. But what also happened this weekend, Apple TV premiered the Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks produced Masters of the Air.
What's that?
It's the World War II series about the bombers. I was like, oh man.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, I saw the first episode last night and so good. Straight up in the same line of Band of Brothers in the Pacific. It was a little weird because the episode kind of just starts and there's no interviews or anything, you know, the way the other shows did. And I'm like, oh, damn. I don't know if there's anyone left alive. You know, because Band of Brothers, it started with the guys, the real survivors talking about the stories. And I'm pretty sure the Pacific did the same thing. But now I'm like, guys, Band of Brothers was over 20 years ago.
Whoa.
No.
It's crazy, right? It was early 2000s. Yeah.
Gosh.
Man.
Yeah, and then the Pacific was, I don't know what year. It was at least 10 years ago. Maybe 11. I don't know. But I was like, wow. So
Well, I want to see it. I want to see it.
Well, I have Apple TV for 3 months because I bought a new iPhone a few months ago. So they're like, oh, here, you get all these like special deals and whatever.
Hey.
So I never redeemed it, and it was going to expire on February 1st. So I was like, redeem. So I've got 3 months.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
I'll be over so I can catch up on some shows.
Bring the popcorn, man. I'm probably going to check out Ted Lasso because everyone's talking about it. I might check out Foundation, the sci-fi one.
Oh, yeah.
It looks pretty heady, you know, science fiction. Like I like to think of myself as a fan of sci-fi, but like this looks like science fiction sci-fi.
Yeah.
For nerds.
That happens when you're adapting, you know, Isaac Asimov, who's like the grandfather of sci-fi.
Yeah.
You know? But I think, to be fair, they also do like a lot of updating and stuff, because I did see, I haven't watched the show, but I did see all the articles coming out. It'd be like, is Foundation the new Star Wars? And the tone of the article was very harumph.
Oh yeah.
They were.
Yeah. Well, I'll see. But right now, I'm checking out Masters of the Air. There's only 2 episodes out so far, so it's going to be a weekly thing. But what's interesting about that, like Band of Brothers and the Pacific as well, you really see a lot of actors really get like their start with those shows, you know, because there's just so many actors in there. I was like, oh, so it's going to be interesting to see like who from this series kind of is the next star, you know. Like right now, there's like 2 leads. The main one is kind of like, it's Austin Butler, who Elvis, and he's in Dune 2. So he's already like becoming a leading man for sure. And he did this right after Elvis, so he still has like the voice, but it kind of fits this, you know, this American, you know, bomber pilot voice. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm not sure who like the other lead is. He looks familiar, But yeah, I don't know. So I'm excited to get into this. But anyway, the story I was going to tell, the show's so cool because one, it's terrifying. You see these planes, these massive bombers, but just how large they are, but how compact and tight. It's essentially you get like 10 guys into like these aluminum cans, essentially, pack them in and shoot them up in the sky. Like they're not even getting shot yet. It's like the flak alone is like ripping them up. One piece will kill a guy. You're like, oh, geez, it's so claustrophobic, so terrifying. But on the other hand, it's also just so cool just to see the way these machines work. They do the whole like the takeoff sequencing, blah 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 on, blah 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 on, this check, flipping all the switches. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. So I'm driving home from work, right? I gas up my Ford Escape, my 2016 Ford Escape I've named T'Challa, and I'm picking up dinner for Dad and myself, right? And I'm like, all right. So I got the gas in there. I'm getting ready to go. I'm going through my pre-flight sequence check off. I'm like, okay, AC on, max setting on, level 2 on, radio. Okay, scan. Okay, cool. Going through the whole thing. So I'm flying, I'm zipping through. Wee. Well, this just shows you how far we've come as a society. I'm driving down the street behind the Alamo Dome. They recently did construction, so there's a lot of like, when like there's big holes in the street, so they just put like the metal plating down.
Yep.
There's like 3 big ones. So I slow down a little bit. And as I'm going through it, right, I look into my empty back seat. I'm like, hang on, boys. It's getting bumpy. And like as soon as I say that, my hazard lights turn on. Like, uh-oh. Oh crap. Well, I'm hitting the button and it won't turn off. So I'm like, oh God, there's an electrical failure. Flipping switches, hitting buttons. I'm like, I'm messing with the thing. And like, I've only had the vehicle for less than a year. So luckily, I haven't had to use the hazard lights. But when I bought it, I tested them. They worked and I turned it off. This time they're not turning off. I'm like, oh, so then you go over the big bridge. I'm hoping my blinkers are still working with the hazards on because I'm turning all these different ways, but I don't know. So I pulled into the parking lot of Bill Miller's. I'm there. I don't know how long. I'm trying to figure out how to turn this thing off. I'm going through the car owner's guide.
The manual?
I'm asking Siri. I'm looking up YouTube. I'm like, oh man, I would have been the first plane out. Yep. I just thought it was funny. Eventually I figured it out. It's just by hitting the button, but it didn't work. So I guess I just had to do it hard enough or loosen it up. I don't know. So I'm like, okay, so then I turn it back on. Okay, turn it off, turn it back on, turn it off. Okay, it works now. So bizarre. I don't know. Yeah. And the funny thing is too, in the first episode of Masters of the Air, there are moments like that where like one plane gets thrown off course because of some kind of instrumental failure or whatever, another one, like one of the engines isn't working. So they have to make the decision, like, are we going to do the whole mission with only 3 or do we turn back? And like those bombers are such like forces of destruction, right? But they're not really well protected. The only reason they're so well fortified is if they're in tight formation. Mm-hmm. So if that one plane falls behind, he's a goner, So there I was. I thought I was a goner in the parking lot of Bill Miller's. I was like, oh man, Austin Butler would look down on me in shame. Oh my goodness. That's my Masters of the Air story. I just wanted to share that with y'all.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see tomorrow. I hope everything's okay with T'Challa.
Just got the dirt knocked off of it. That's all.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think that's the next movie we got to watch, Dad. The Marvel one. Wakanda Forever.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
That one's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hurts. It's rough.
Yeah. But we're in this place now where like with the MCU where dad's not watching everything because there's just so much. So we're just kind of going through like the greatest hits, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're watching the Thor or the Doctor Strange. We're
Okay.
just gonna skip ahead to Wakanda Forever.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But speaking of heroes and myths,
Yes.
when we said we were going to record, I kind of threw out the idea. Well, why don't we talk about like what I'm curious to know is you gentlemen, your favorite stories. Now, I was thinking fictional stories, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Any medium, movies, books, songs, like just what is something
Oh.
when I ask you what's your favorite stories, what do you think of?
First thing comes to mind, Bruce Springsteen, Jungle Land.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So he's telling the story of the rat and the barefoot girl. It's got all the elements of any good story. There's a beginning, the setup and everything, there's the conflict, and then there's a closing. Whether it's a song or a play or whatever, you can have layers within those three components. Springsteen, I'm a fan, in case you didn't know. He's awesome at the setup. He uses his words and his phrasing, paints the picture so you can see it in your mind. So for me, my favorite story would definitely have to be Jungle Land, Bruce Springsteen. Now, if you ask me for a different medium, something outside of music, there's all kinds of stuff.
Well, let's just not gloss over that. Let's
Okay.
focus in a little bit. Like, I think Springsteen, you can put his what's the word? I don't know, his catalog, his repertoire of music. You just put the Springsteen catalog on random, you're gonna find a song that's a damn good story. And I think unfortunately that's something we've kind of lost or we're getting away from in the music industry, just the actual storytelling side of it. He was one of, but I mean, even then, even in his prime, even when so many others were doing, telling good stories, like he stood out even then. Although it's not my favorite Springsteen song, the first one I thought of was Downbound Train. I don't think it's as well written as Jungle Land, or it's as good of a story as Jungle Land, but it's so simple, and it's almost like the opposite. It's like less is more. We don't really need to know what happened in that relationship to understand that it ended. And he's singing about hearing the train in the distance, wakes him up in the middle of the night and not even thinking about it. He's just running. He's running through the fields to get to the old house that we used to live in, that we loved in. And once he gets there, he realizes it's dilapidated, it's empty, you're not there, and realizes the train was just in his head. It was in his dreams the whole time. It's like, man, the whole story is told afterwards. It's after the fact.
Yeah,
and it's such a heartbreaking one. Especially, I don't know what show it was, but he performs it live with what instrument is it? No, oh wow, no, it sounds like an organ of some sort.
Okay.
I don't know what. what instrument is. It's in the organ family, maybe, you know, it's just very like I'm not doing a good job of
A
selling
hurdy-gurdy? I don't know.
it. Well,
A harpsichord,
harpsichord, is that what it was?
maybe.
Could
I'm
be.
guessing it's in the family. It kind of sounds
Harpsichord's in the organ family?
yeah, it's got keys and the works. I mean,
Oh, wow,
it's
yeah.
just think of uh like Mozart, that real kind
Mm-hmm.
of higher pitched. It's like a little piano, harpsichord. I
Hmm.
bet you that's it.
Probably, yeah. It was just from like one show, you know. So like, I'm looking it up, and it's all acoustic. It's guitar, so I don't. I'll have to try and find it, and we'll revisit the song at a later point. But yeah, like it's beautiful, and it's just slow, and the fact that if it is a harpsichord, that might be. I'm thinking that's what it is. There's something haunting about it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
that instrument and just the natural sound, and it's like, oh man. So yeah, there's never going to be another Springsteen.
No.
Even
Nope.
and I'm a fan of Springsteen covers, but even then, like no one can do it the way he does it, the way he sings the songs, the way
Yeah.
he the way he uses his like the language and the way he uses his voice. It's just so uniquely him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and even just the cadence, it's like you can't remake one of his songs. You can't cover it. A lot of people do, but like you can't cover it without inherently changing it because your voice doesn't naturally go that way. You don't naturally sing that way. You know, you have to change like too much to it almost becomes an imitation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to just imitate Springsteen to do a good job instead of like interpreting. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess since we already since we're into Springsteen, Sam, I want to know what's your favorite Springsteen song
Oh
as
man.
far as the storytelling goes.
Man. Uh yeah, I've thought about this. I think I even told Dad this, and if I remember Dad's reaction right, he was like, "Really?
I
Huh?"
could hear him saying that.
Me too. No, okay, so like just to talk briefly about it and kind of to like overarch with like I think the kind of storytelling that I like while still like pertaining to music. I love songs that that I guess that are tragic. I like hearing those tragedies, you know?
Yeah.
Keeping it in Springsteen, The River. Love The River.
Mm.
You know, that's like I remember I vividly remember listening to that one growing up.
Yeah.
Um and then kind of like moving that into I was just telling some people this weekend how like I went through a phase of listening to a lot of Elvis, and there was listening to In the Ghetto
Hmm.
a lot, you
Yeah.
know, like that kind of a thing. Johnny Cash has some great ones too. So yeah, like there is something to be said about like just this air, you know, it's Matt, it's like how you were saying, it's like we don't need to know the entire story to know where it ends. We
Yeah.
to know that it's over. You know, and I like yeah, there's something that I really love about that. You know, it's there's this passion, you know, there's this deep, you know, like soulful feeling in those words and in the tune and all of it. Pushing all that aside, says nothing about what my favorite Springsteen song is. And I think as of right now, it's Dancing in the Dark.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Really?
That's the exact reaction you had. Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know. Like, yeah, still sort of still sort of like telling the story, but it is a lot more personal, but it is all about just getting out there, just doing whatever it is that you love, like just getting out there living.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's just really like hitting me, within these last couple of years. Like,
Yeah.
and that, yeah, there's something that resonates in me like that. And yeah, when I turn, I have it on a few different playlists. So whenever it pops up, I'm like, yeah. Just keep
Oh
going.
man,
I'm
you
like,
sound
yeah,
just
this
like
is
him.
thank you. Thank you. I did that so we couldn't get the copyright infringement.
Oh yeah.
You know, yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so Dad, so Jungle Land, is that your favorite Springsteen song, period, then?
Oh, uh,
I mean, it's hard because he has so
it's
many like
yeah.
great ones.
Yeah.
There's too many to
And
say.
he's got different eras, where
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like
Definitely.
definitely when he's like starting out and when he's young, in the prime, now that he's older, yeah.
Because when you
So
look at
yeah,
his great like the storytelling ones, you got to think of that those are like my top two. I was thinking Downbound Train and The River.
Hmm.
And then his still I think his best ones are like Badlands for sure, Born to Run,
Badlands.
the big ones,
Hmm.
but still my favorite Springsteen is I'm on Fire,
Yeah.
hmm
not to be confused
Hmm.
with Fire. I
Yes.
I do feel like I'm on Fire is another one of his I don't know, sleeper hits. Like when you look at Bruce Springsteen, I'm on Fire, you get a lot of results for just Fire. That was the bigger song. And I think that's the one people listen to more.
Hmm.
But I don't know, something about I'm on Fire. It's what, like 2 minutes? It's sweet, it's
yeah.
simple, it's short. And as a kid growing up, that music video was like the story of that music video. I was watching, I was like, oh wow, okay, cool. He makes a choice. He leaves the keys in the mailbox. He doesn't
Hmm.
ring the bell.
Hmm.
He takes the high road and walks home.
Yeah.
So following this, y'all have talked about a lot of his older stuff.
Yeah.
His okay. His newer stuff. So this is maybe 2 albums ago. Western Stars.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's several really good songs on there, not just the stories, but the actual music itself. But that's another show. My favorite song from that album is Moonlight Motel. And
Hmm.
it fits the same pattern. He's telling the story afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's all his point of view, but he's telling the story by using this old broken down motel to take you through that story. So it goes from a an active motel where they sneak away in the afternoons, he and his girl and everything. But there's also another story between them that's told. And then as he reflects on it, he starts describing the motel as uh, being boarded up, and there's cracks in the swimming pool, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think, lyrically anyway, that's some of his best work.
Mm.
You know,
I love that
it's not.
concept.
Yeah, and the way, and I mean, he's awesome at the way he uses the visuals. He talks about driving at night and having the leaves fall. You, if you're driving at night and you see leaves falling, you can't be driving very fast.
Hmm.
So you have to imagine he's driving, thinking of the girl, telling you the story as he's driving along. He can't be driving very fast, when he comes to the point where he stops and turns back and goes back to the old motel,
Mm.
you know. And so I was like, yeah, okay, that was cool. There's another one where he talks about running off and leaving his friends to go work for the Bureau of Land Management. So he's a working cowboy. And he's telling the story of what he left behind, but he tells the story of what it's like to be out there, where he can throw his voice out into the canyon and it echoes back her name. You know, things like this. He describes the grass and how it moves in the wind and chasing horses and you know, all this kind of stuff. It's all
Dang.
very, very picturesque. So for this, like I call it his cowboy album, but he paints a picture of basically the open skies and the open country through all these songs. And it's I don't want to say it's the same format, but his ability to convey those different stories in that album is just classic Springsteen.
Mm.
That album, I think of it like Cowboy Van Gogh. You know, it's very I didn't really think of it as cowboy until you mentioned it. I was like, yeah, it really was a Western country kind of album. But just the way he uses his language in everything, but especially when it pertains to nature, it's just so cool. It's something magical. And you know, I don't know a lot about Vincent van Gogh, but the little I do know, he's one of my favorite painters, or probably my favorite. And of course, Starry Night, which I know that's everyone's favorite, you know. I'm not one of those painting snobs be like, oh, you know, actually technically my favorite would probably be Pikachu Van Gogh, and then second would be Starry Night. But yeah, no, like that whole album is just so beautiful. And being from Texas, growing up in the Scouts, you know, and spending so much of our youth outdoors, is just something that kind of hits home, you know, about that one. And I remember not really enjoying it when it first came out because it is more country, you know, than I'm comfortable with.
Oh my
but as I've
gosh.
aged and gotten older, you know, it's really
You live
it's
here,
grown
man.
on me.
You live in Texas. You gotta be comfy with some country.
Well, that's the album, Sam. That and Lil Nas,
Lil Nas X.
Lil Nas X, and who's the other one? Orville Peck.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
All right.
That's my country. That's the most liberal answer,
right?
You'll ever
My
get.
favorite country. My favorite country singers: Springsteen, Lil Nas X, and Orville Peck. Wow.
Wow.
Incredible.
Man.
We're going blue this year, Dad. We're going blue. I feel
it. That's a storytelling. Unfortunately, Sam and I, we don't really get to talk about music a lot on this podcast, but we talk about music a lot, like IRL when we're at work or whatever. And I think part of it is because like you got to listen to the music to understand what we're talking about. And we can't really do that on a podcast or on YouTube without getting sued. You know what I mean? And I wish that was something we could get more into because we have talked at length about how we really miss those albums that are really like stories. Like Springsteen, his albums are either one big story or they're all from the same world, you know, something like that. Radical Face, another one of my favorite musicians, he had a trilogy of albums called The Family Tree, I believe. And each album was it's all one family, but like the first one was, I want to say, like one generation. Second one was the other. The third one was another. So it's three generations of the same family. And they're all stories from different family members. And it's most of it's fiction. He just makes it up, you know. But it's really cool, and you kind of it builds this world, and we're losing that with music today because one of the things I really, really hate is how there's so many good up and coming artists. They don't have albums. They just have singles, you know, or their EPs are only like
Hmm.
2 or 3 tracks. And and I'm not really up to date with the TikTok world, but there's a lot of musicians who are really finding audience through TikTok, and because of that, that's a big reason why it's just about
Hmm.
getting the new single out. And it's
I
like,
mean that, yeah,
damn
that's
it,
that's
like,
kind of the thing too. I follow a lot of people on TikTok who they want to be in the industry, they want to be a part of it, but um
yeah,
yeah, they just that is kind of the thing that they're facing. It's like labels and studios now, there that's kind of the mode is that you have to get your music on the algorithm, you have to get your song out there, on
yeah,
there, so it's no longer like you have to hit the top 40, or you got to sell this many CDs, you got to go do this. It's like, no, you need to be popular on social
hmm,
media, and consistently. That's the thing, that's sort of the thing
right,
that's changing a lot, is that, like you have to constantly be putting out stuff, putting out your work, doing, and now to a point where it's like we have
hmm,
huge musicians who, just to stay in conversation in the industry, they have TikToks, you know, where they'll
yeah,
post about, yep, I'm at a concert, or here, meet the bands that, it's like, we already
hmm,
know who you are. But this new generation, or, whoever, like, this is just where we're at now, yeah, so it's,
yeah,
and it sucks too, because like there are a lot of the ones that I follow, like, they are smaller, but it's nice to see them just grow and learn, and
hmm,
and yeah, some of them, yeah, now they have some songs on Spotify, or Apple Music or something, like, yeah,
yeah.
it's the entire music industry is changing so fast.
It's crazy because, like, for example, Ariana Grande hasn't really put anything out musically in a while, but she just released her new single, big hit. Everyone's loving it, and that's that's interesting because, like you're saying, she can do that because she already has a following and she's been in this
Hmm.
industry for a long time. That she can disappear for a few years and go do acting and whatever. She's filming the Wicked movie right now, and then she drops a single and everyone like blows up over it. But a lot of the up and comers, they can't. They just have to, in order to stay relevant and to keep the listeners coming in. It's like every couple months you gotta drop a new track, gotta drop a new track, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, that's rough. Um, we'll have to do a whole other episode on how we're gonna tackle and change the music industry,
Us?
Sam.
Man, that's gonna be
Us.
real hard when, like, half of us can't carry a tune, and we're
That's
both
fine. We
bad
just
at
gotta
rhythm.
produce. We just gotta find the people who are good at
I
music.
was I just I just sent Matt, like, a week ago or so, a clip from the Muppets where Fozzie and Ralph are trying to do the "I Got Rhythm" song.
Oh, I love that one. I
I
love it.
got rhythm. I got rhythm. Yeah. Whoa, 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 Fozzie, Fozzie.
Well, that was our music slash Bruce Springsteen episode.
Join us
Uh,
next week.
what else? I know we still got some time. What other? Since we're talking about music that really moves us, what other stories are out there for you?
Oh gosh. What do you mean other stories? Musically? Oh,
No,
well,
anything. I mean, you naturally just start talking about the Springsteen song because of the way it made you feel. Is there anything else out there like that in any medium?
uh no. But I will tell you what we're losing. So when I was little, we used to go visit the old people, great grandparents, grandparents, and this is probably cultural, but when we would go to Floresville, we'd visit the great grandparents. All the women would stay inside and all the men would go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Well, being a little man, I was able to go out with the old guys. Okay. The stories that those old men would tell in English and in Spanish were just incredible. Just incredible. You could sit there for hours and listen to these guys tell all these different stories. And because most of them were family related. So in Floresville, small town, large families, you're always talking about someone's uncle or cousin or the brother of somebody so and so, right? So they tell these fantastic stories. That's something that doesn't happen anymore. We get together as a family on Sunday. We're not telling stories. We're talking about how our day went, how so and so's birthday is coming up, and things like that. But we're not telling these stories about how Grandpa Sam and Grandpa Pete used to play baseball together with the Negro League teams because they liked baseball so much. They didn't care who they were playing with.
Mm.
So they were the only two Hispanic guys in Floresville who were playing in the Negro games. We don't tell stories anymore about how Grandpa Sam taught me how to set up the pot for the baseball games. So the men would for gambling,
for gambling.
They had a little beer booth like behind the first base dugout, and I would sit on Grandpa Sam's lap, and he would tell me in Spanish where to write the numbers down on this little piece of paper, and he would take the money from the men, and I had to give him a number and pass it out. But we don't tell stories like that anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
And there's also, just real quick, there's like, what are the implications of that? Because like what you're saying about the Negro Baseball League, like, sure, yeah, that's a good story that you should tell and you should share, but at the same time, it's like, once those stories stop getting told, you start getting these generations who don't even know that was a thing.
Oh, yes.
How many people out there really care about baseball, especially of the youth right now? How many people know that they had to have their own league because no one else would play them?
Yeah.
Those stories stop being told. And even though it's kind of dropped, it's kind of brought up in school a little bit. It's always less and less, and it's kind of always on the periphery. And that's how we're destined. History is doomed to repeat itself,
Yeah.
That's just my little doom and gloom that I just wanted to bring up there. But
you're right. You're absolutely right. Dr. Edward T. Jimenez, Board of Regents, UT Austin, Board of Regents, UTSA. He was my mother's first cousin. Okay. So Nana's cousin. All right. He was the valedictorian of Floresville High School. He was not allowed to give his valedictorian speech or even sit on the stage because he was Mexican American. That man got a full ride scholarship to Schreiner College up in Kerrville, then went on to medical school in Galveston and became a flight surgeon in World War II. He comes back after the war, sets up shop on the west side of San Antonio so that he can bring medical care to the poor people through his activism and all that kind of stuff. He winds up being named to the Board of Regents for the University of Texas. That story is like 3 paragraphs on the online Texas history of prominent people. 3 paragraphs. Okay. He's the guy that brought me into the world. He was a wonderful man, super smart, very kind. But his story is going to be lost. Sure, there's his name is on the main drive off of UTSA in there, but it's just a name. The students that are out there now, they don't know who he is. They don't.
Yeah.
So that story is going to be lost, and tons of stories that are. I don't want to say key, but are part of our history, our family history. Those stories are being lost. There's a Jimenez with an X, who was the very first Mexican-American marshal in Wilson County. We are direct descendants of that guy. His story is being lost. But it's not so much the outside influences, it's that as families are not conveying the family histories to the next generation.
Right.
And that's not just our family, that's in general. That's what's happened. That's where history truly gets lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of makes it even just so much more relevant to the typical stories that we talk about on the show, TV and film and stuff. Like look at Band of Brothers. Those guys' stories, they're not going to be forgotten for a long time because of that show. The book was popular. It really helped those legacies live on. The show reached so many people, and kind of getting back now to Masters of the Air. That's why it was kind of off-putting to start the first episode and you jump right in it. And I was like, not thinking, I was expecting to see the interviews. And then it was like a splash of cold water. I was like, oh, damn, they're gone.
Yeah.
They were still here 20 years ago. They were still here 10 years ago. But now, like, I don't think anyone is left. And, but at least, and for this example, you have these 3 great series where these men and their names and their stories and everything they did get to live on, most of them are white, I mean, good for them for everything they did. It would be nice to get a little more recognition for everyone else, specifically us. Now, I know Masters of the Air, it goes more into some of the I don't remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays the new Doctor in Doctor Who, he has a character, and they're going to get into the Tuskegee Airmen this season, so that should be cool. But yeah, what was the book about the Mexican Americans from Texas who were in World War II? I don't remember what it was called, but the freaking Wilder Valderrama or whatever bought the rights to it, and nothing ever has come from it. And I'm like, damn it, Fez, come on.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called. Soldiers of the Barrio, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
We'll have to find it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that just kind of hammers home the idea of like just everyone has stories. Everyone from every background, they all have stories, and unfortunately, they're not being represented or told in a big format like that, like TV or film, which is why things like the writer strike and the actor strike, why those things are really important. It's not just about celebs making more millions of dollars. It's not about that at all, because in reality, that's not going to happen. It's more about the smaller people trying to make a living doing that, making a living, and also getting their stories out there. Shea Serrano, his show,
Primo.
what was it called? Primo, right? Yeah, it's on Amazon Freevee, which the only reason I have the app is because of the damn D&D 24-hour channel, which I don't know, that's a whole other debacle. But now I'm like, hey, I got Freevee, so maybe I'll check out Primo, which takes place in San Antonio, but it's all filmed in New Mexico.
It's cheaper.
Yeah. Because Texas doesn't want to make money.
No, they don't.
So that's how much they hate the liberals from Hollywood. They don't want to make money off of film production.
Yeah.
So
even though we have, a huge film department at UT Austin, even though Robert Rodriguez, one of the great filmmakers that came out of the 90s, independent filmmaker boom, lives and works in Austin. They just
all they got to do is talk to the Georgia government and be like, hey, what's the benefits of having a film industry? Talk to the New Mexico government. Hey, what's the benefits, of having a film industry, And then once they realize how much money is to be made, then they'll start wisening up. I don't know if that's where it is now.
I vividly remember when we were years ago when we were driving through New Mexico, seeing giant billboards for like this, like Grey's Anatomy-esque doctor hospital drama in San Antonio, because on the big billboard they had the Tower of America on it, and it was popping out of the billboard, and I was like, that's San Antonio. That's us. But of course, it's not filmed here. It's filmed there.
Yeah. I want to say they filmed like 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was called. Yeah. I remember after Battlestar Galactica, Trisha Helfer had a show. I think she played a Texas Ranger, and it was set in San Antonio. I was like, oh, that's cool. It only lasted a season. It's like, damn. I'm curious, like, what kind of stories could you tell here in San Antonio? Because I was looking up the Chicago series. So it was Chicago Fire and then PD, Med, and they're all connected and they do crossovers. I'm like, what would like a San Antonio show be like? What could you really? Not that you could only tackle one type of stories, but what could be different about it? I think for one, it'd be a lot more relevant to tell more of everything going on at the border, for sure. A lot more migrants from Mexico here than in Chicago, although there is some up there. There is a good amount up there, but I think you could focus on that more, and actually that story isn't really being told except on the news, and depending on which news you watch, you're going to get a different story. So that would be something that you could tackle and address. Which actually, that was what was kind of interesting about watching the new the Walker reboot with Jared Padalecki, seeing how they kind of tackled that. I only watched the first season because then Lindsey Morgan left, but
and they also didn't cast you.
They didn't cast me in the Walker pilot. I think it was the pilot episode. I don't remember. They cast some skinny, scrawny Mexican kid.
That could have been you.
That could have been me. Like all the descriptions, like it made it sound like he was a bigger, like a bigger person, not a bigger role, but like a bigger character. And I'm like, I'm a bigger person, so I'm like, let's do it. I forgot, like you get to punch Walker or something, and he gets to like throw you through a cabinet. I was like, yeah, let's do it. No. I don't know.
These are the stories that we have to preserve.
Jared Padalecki is like 6'5",
It's not that much taller than you.
that's at least 6 inches taller than me.
Okay. Huh.
But still, like he's built like a tree, you know. So they give him this tiny little actor he could easily throw. I'm like, it would have been more dramatic if you give him a bigger guy, you know. See him throw a boulder of a man through a
Mhm.
wall, you know. I'm like,
Maybe that's the thing.
yeah, here you
They
go.
didn't want to show they didn't want to show us as being like that imposing. You know, it's like, oh, what's this scrawny guy gonna do? This scrawny little
Yeah.
Mexican, what's he gonna do against it? If you have somebody who's closer to his height and a little more built, it'd be like, oh, he might actually do something,
And
you
like
know?
the whole storyline around that was that that guy ends up coming back and suing Walker. He's like, "Oh, police brutality."
Ah,
So I think that's probably why they went with the smaller actor because it is more of like, "Oh, this big giant white guy threw him through this cabinet or whatever." You know, it makes it seem more brutal if there is a size
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how if that guy came back for 1 or 2 episodes. All I know, it wasn't me, and I was disappointed when I saw it. I was like, really, this is the guy. It's crazy just seeing that. There's the movie. I forgot what it was called, but it's with Jason Sudeikis in like his attempt at like a dark thriller kind of like Taken style one, and that's the one where I auditioned for like henchmen with a chainsaw. So like, I'm curious to see who they cast in that
Oh,
one.
yeah, yeah. Did you have to audition with the chainsaw?
I used the baseball bat.
Maybe that's why you didn't get it.
Maybe I didn't actually have a chainsaw, and it felt kind of weird, just like mimicking holding it, especially because the audition. Like, I don't even remember if there was a line. There might have been just one, so you're supposed to just look intimidating. I'm like, am I pretending to carry a chainsaw? I was like, so I just use a baseball bat, you know?
Mhm.
You should
And
have
I'm
told
like,
me.
hey, Dad, bring home a chainsaw.
There you go.
That's one of the reasons why I don't audition anymore. I was just so sick of it. Like, really? This is the scene? Like, there's like literally zero direction.
Okay. Okay. So you know, I know we've sort of left this theme of like what's your favorite story or genre of story? And now we're kind
uh-huh.
of just talking about the importance of stories. Because those
Okay.
are here's a perfect example. So last week, the internet was going crazy because actor Dev Patel,
Oh yeah.
he was in Skins, he was in The Green Knight. He's had such a long career that he there was a new trailer for a movie he stars in, he directed, that going a little bit behind the scenes, he has been thinking about for the longest time, ever since he made the huge jump into making movies.
Uh-huh.
He's been working on it actively for at least 4 years, and he he had to do all these things just to get it funded, and then finally Jordan Peele saw it and grabbed it and took it away from Netflix because Netflix was going to distribute it and said, no, this
Mm-mm.
deserves to be a wide release, a theatrical release. And
Yeah.
now that trailer is out. It's called Monkey Man. And it's it, a lot of people were like chagrining and hemming and hawing about this, but it is essentially like an Indian John Wick, where
Yeah.
Dev Patel is this guy who has to go fight, you know, the criminal underworld, do all these things. But it feels also like a very personal story, and that's that's a movie that's coming out this year. That's a movie that even somebody like Dev Patel couldn't couldn't really get made. Could almost didn't get made his way, and was almost buried again under an algorithm. You
Yeah.
know, there are so many the there are just so many hurdles, there are so many obstacles for for certain people to tell their stories, you know,
Yeah.
even, you know, to bring it a little bit closer to us. And I know I'm the only one of us that saw it, but last year, Blue Beetle, we got,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a Latino superhero in live action, you know, maybe not the first one, but a big one underneath DC.
Mm-hmm.
It's the company that makes Batman and Superman, you know? And then we have to be excellent. We have to be more than excellent. Our stories have to be way up top just to compete, you know, just to do
Yeah.
all of that. And it's frustrating, you know, and you have to make your own opportunities now, you know. You have to
Yeah.
be like Dev Patel, who couldn't get cast as an action hero, you know, and just say, screw it, I'm gonna go make my own, you know. And that's, you know, that's kind of the future of storytelling, is that now, with everybody who having a camera, having social media, you know, having, you know, access to to the internet and all these things, like we are, and kind of like, just from looking at it from like, you know, from like my job, like just the book selling perspective, like we're seeing so many more marginalized voices who are doing that, you know, who are
Yeah.
seizing that opportunity to say like, hey, like this is our story, you know, this is my
Mm-hmm.
story, and it doesn't fit the popular, you know, what has been, you know, conceived of as the popular, you know, story, you know. So yeah, I don't know. It makes me frustrated as a storyteller, you know, when you know, looking at certain stories, it's like, what is deemed as worthy of being told, and how is it told? How many people are going to see this or listen to this or hear this, you know? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think, Dad, we had sort of this conversation when you were studying to get your degree, and I've had conversation with friends about it, where it's like, look at just how we were taught our history, and you know, both us as Mexican Americans, and then just US history, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then even further in that, when we're going to college, it's like, you know, there's a certain history that is taught as, this is history, and this is required to get your
Right.
degree. Whereas my own history, that's an elective, that's a
Yeah.
supplemental course. And to me, it does. Yeah, and you know, maybe I thought differently when I was younger, but now I'm just like, that doesn't feel elective to me. I don't know so much about my own
Yeah.
people or our own history because of that mentality.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. Hey, Texas State, you can skip Texas history and you can just take the history of baseball instead.
Yeah.
Which, when I was in college, I thought that was a cool thing, and now I'm like, hold on a second. Something,
Something's not right about
something,
that.
yeah, something's off about this.
Because there are people out there that don't
Yeah,
want you to know the real history. They want you to
Mm-hmm.
know
yeah,
the history they want you to know.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
they don't want to feel bad about the history that they know. They don't want to feel guilty about it,
Correct.
you know?
Correct.
yeah.
And like, I'm totally against this cancel culture. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind, and I understand the folks that want to take down statues. You know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool with that. But let's tell the right story in the classroom. Okay, let's tell the real story that's going on. But unfortunately, and this isn't just a Texas problem, but
No.
across the country, There's just like you said, people don't want to feel bad. They don't want to feel bad
Yeah.
about what their ancestors did. Well, I'm sorry, nobody's perfect. Everybody has made mistakes. Just come out. It's always better to tell the truth than anything else. And that's something that's really difficult to do.
And they're not even being blamed. That's the thing. It's like, we're not blaming you for this. We're blaming the ones who came before you, you know? But it is the fact that they don't want to feel, they can't deal with their own guilt or the
Right.
shame behind it, or the legacy that leaves. You know, it's all none of it's real. You know, it's just all in the head. It's like, and that's what really pisses me off about it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, if you don't think about what great grandpa did, 100 years
Yeah.
ago, it doesn't affect you, and you can feel happy about it. Now,
Yeah.
should you be punished for the sins of the past generations? No, of course not. No one's calling for that. All we're saying is there's a story that needs to be told, and it's not uh, our story and others, people of color, their stories are not being told because we are people of color.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong part. So we get our number 2 pencils and sharpen them and start writing this stuff down.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to the whole thing, the cancel culture thing, it's such a weird divide because so many people attribute it to uh the liberals, or it's because they're trying to be woke or whatever. But it's like, well, hang on a second. I think you're attributing it to Twitter, people online. But also, if you just look historically at, I don't know what you want to call it. We'll just call it cancel culture. Who's the ones doing it? Who are the ones leading the charge? And it's not who they say it is. We try not to get political on this podcast, but we're talking about history here. We're talking about facts. And the fact is, it's always by definition, conservative is the ones who are afraid of progress and afraid of change. And that's where the cancel culture comes from. It's fear, the conservatives are the reason why I had to get mom and dad to go buy my CD, my Papa Roach CD from Best Buy for me, because it has the parental advisory sticker on it and I couldn't buy it as a kid. It's because some Republican guy, some senator somewhere is like, I don't want our kids listening to this music. Nobody talks about that when they're talking about cancel culture. They are literally trying to cancel what music you're listening to, what shows you're watching. All of that stuff is what the real cancel culture was. Now everyone's just complaining about like, I can't say what I want to say anymore. That's infringing on my free speech. I'm being canceled. So it's there's just so many different sides to that equation, and especially like, honestly, to me, like, cancel culture is just a bunch of BS, because outside of Harvey Weinstein, no one's actually got canceled. Kevin Spacey had some down years, but he's making movies again. So is everyone else who's been quote unquote canceled. Yeah. We played Dungeons and Dragons. It was the conservative Christians who were so terrified of Satan that they tried canceling this board game. They tried canceling heavy metal. Innocent men went to prison because they listened to heavy metal and had skulls on their vans and no one believed them that they were innocent of murder. You
Mhm.
know, it's just it snowballs. You want to go back to the original? I mean, look at who turned on Christ. You know, I mean that right. I mean, just look at how history has changed through time. You know, I mean, I'm not saying it to make light of it, but I mean, if you want to talk about cancel culture, look at that. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
um,
Like
yeah,
the thing about it relating to, sort of the thing we've been talking about, like who gets to tell stories, who gets to say, what
hmm
story is worthy, or who gets to just be in the conversation, you know
yeah,
uh look at Joseph McCarthy trying to out all of these people who didn't believe in his beliefs, who didn't
yeah,
believe, the American government was the pinnacle, the end all be all, the perfect civilization in society. Uh,
hmm
and people were outed for their political beliefs, and
hmm
even less than that, it might not even be a political belief, it might just be who they were, you know,
yeah,
people of color, people who weren't white, people who weren't heterosexual, you know,
hmm
anything could get brought up and said, well, that's communism, and in our eyes, that's bad. And when you
hmm
when you just get down to it, all it is saying that this, I as a person believe this is the norm. Anything outside of that is bad. And that's all it is.
yeah,
That's all it is. And usually those fingers tend to point at the people who don't follow this quote unquote typical nuclear families lifestyle. And that's how, like, that, yeah,
yeah,
it's cruel and it's morally wrong. And yeah, and of course, their whole thing is conflating smaller things, conflating, being canceled on the internet as, being persecuted. And that's not
yeah,
what that,
yeah.
like, that there is no basis of comparison for that
They're
at
forcing
all.
us to wear
Hmm.
masks.
Yeah, it's like, yeah,
You
we'll make a
know,
huge controversy about this thing, where
yeah,
then, what we're really missing out is what we are doing at a legal level and in the legislation and in the Senate and all of these
yeah,
things. It's like that's the huge talking point, or that's the selling point. The selling point is you know, getting upset at these culture things that don't really matter, where,
yeah,
so that you don't look at what we're also doing here. And
yeah.
yeah.
All that to say, storytelling matters.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you get to tell your story, because there's ever, like I said, everyone comes from different places and have and has different stories and different experiences, and it's not just about uh telling black stories or brown stories or white stories, because that in itself, there's the whole classism as well, thing.
Hmm.
Not all white storytellers are able to tell the stories that they want to tell either. um Not even to mention stories from men compared to women. I mean, everyone's talking about it right now, how Barbie got all the snubs for the Oscars, which I agree. But at the same time, there's a lot of women of color who were nominated this year, uh, and rightly so. Unfortunately, their names are kind of being,
They're being dragged through the mud.
well, I wasn't going to say dragged through the mud. I mean, they're just kind of, their names are being just hidden,
Well, that
shadowed,
too. Yeah,
because
overshadowed.
everyone's
And
talking
yeah.
about Barbie, So, it's a mix. Like, I do think Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig deserve to be nominated. But I am glad that all these other women got nominations, So, um, yeah, storytelling matters. The more people who are allowed to tell stories, the better and more diverse. And I don't mean just by skin color. I mean just the types of storytelling that gets out there as well. So yeah, that's what. I guess all in all, this was not the episode I was expecting to record today. Who knows how we got here, but tying it all in, that's what we like to talk about: storytelling, specifically the stories that we feel aren't being told or are underrated or whatever, which is literally the name of the show, Lost Legacies. That was kind of the sticking point when we decided on that name.
That's true.
It wasn't just a show about Lost. It was, is Lost actually good or not? And that's what spawned the whole idea of talking about stories that were viewed one way and we thought another, or something like that,
True.
So I guess this episode definitely lives up to the title.
Oh, so that's why we're called Lost Legacy.
Probably more than the 100 and whatever episodes we've done before. We're really talking about Lost Legacies now.
Surprise, guys. Welcome to the first episode of Lost Legacies.
Oh, God. Oh, man. This is the show from here on out. Well, Dad, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is always fun.
It's fun. And to think we started this episode talking about Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, man.
I think he would be proud of us.
I think so, too.
So, talk about a good blue-collar white man who's on your side. Bruce Springsteen. Right?
There you go.
He's a good one.
He's one of the good ones.
He's one of the good ones. No.
Man.
I was just talking about that today. How I hate that phrase. I hate it when somebody says it about me, and I'm like, that's man, I don't.
It's gonna break my heart during the race wars. Sorry, Bruce. I'm sorry, boss.
He'll understand.
Gosh.
He'd be like, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Oh man.
I love it. Somebody said that about Tony Hawk. Like they made that meme where it was like when I have to shoot Tony Hawk during the race war, and the guy's super sad about it. Well, Tony Hawk found that meme and he's just like, I appreciate the hesitation.
Oh God, that's horrible.
Oh man.
We go down to the river and into the river we dive.
Whoa.
Guys, thank you for joining us another on this surprise fun episode.
Man,
let us know which side you're on in the race war at Twitter. Oh God, we're gonna get canceled.
Can we cancel ourselves? Is that what's happening?
I think we just did. Everyone hit us
this
up.
is my last episode of this podcast.
Hit us up, hashtag Lost Legacies. In an attempt to address cancel culture, we just canceled ourselves. Guys, you can find me. Don't bring pitchforks, but you can find me at Twitter at _Matt Jimenez and on Instagram at Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
Don't find me. I don't want you to find me. Listen to our old episodes, but don't find me.
So is there a difference between canceling yourself and shooting yourself in the foot?
I don't know. At this point,
I think the
don't
result's the same.
Yeah. Well,
until next
guys,
time.
let us know if you want us to bring Dad back.
From the race wars.
Oh, I hope he makes it. Oh man. Well, so I guess, guys, we'll see you on the other side.
So long.